Step back in time to an era that reshaped everything: art, science, architecture, and the human spirit itself. The Renaissance, spanning roughly the 14th to 17th centuries, was a cultural explosion rooted in the rediscovery of classical philosophy and a renewed belief in human potential. From the divine frescoes of Michelangelo to the scientific genius of Leonardo da Vinci, Renaissance artists weren't just painters. They were visionaries who reimagined what it meant to be human. In this video, we explore how this monumental period gave rise to timeless masterpieces, transformed Europe, and laid the foundations of the modern world. Let's journey into the heart of the Renaissance and meet the brilliant minds who turned paint, stone, and canvas into immortality. The word Renaissance means rebirth, and that's exactly what this era represented: a revival of the art, culture, and knowledge of ancient Greece and Rome. It began in Italy during the 14th century, in cities like Florence, Venice, and Rome, before spreading across Europe over the next 3 centuries. Several factors contributed to the rise of the Renaissance. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 brought Greek scholars and classical texts to Italy. The printing press, invented by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century, made knowledge more accessible. The growth of trade and banking, especially in Florence, created wealthy patrons like the Medici family who funded the arts. The decline of feudalism and rise of individualism encouraged human-centered thought. Artists and thinkers during the Renaissance shifted focus from purely religious themes to humanism, the study of human potential, nature, and achievement. This didn't reject religion, but sought to understand humanity's place within a divine plan, using reason and observation. The Renaissance can be divided into 3 phases. 1. Early Renaissance, 13th to 14th centuries, led by artists like Giotto and Masaccio, who pioneered realistic perspective and human emotion. 2. High Renaissance, late 1400s to 1520. A golden age marked by geniuses like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael. 3. Late Renaissance Mannerism, 1520s to 1600s. More stylized and expressive with artists like El Greco and Pontormo. This era saw breakthroughs in perspective and anatomy, oil painting and fresco techniques, architecture, sculpture, and engineering philosophy, science, and literature. The Renaissance wasn't just an art movement. It was a reawakening of the Western world, driven by curiosity, creativity, and a belief in progress. Renaissance art introduced revolutionary techniques and philosophical ideals that changed the way humans saw the world and themselves. Here are its defining traits: realism and naturalism. Artists began to study human anatomy, light, and shadow to make their subjects look lifelike. Muscles, expressions, and gestures became more accurate, making figures seem alive. Linear perspective. Invented by Filippo Brunelleschi, this technique allowed artists to depict 3-dimensional space on a flat surface using vanishing points. It created depth and realism, seen famously in Leonardo's The Last Supper. Chiaroscuro and sfumato. These are shading techniques used to create contrast and soft transitions between light and dark. Chiaroscuro adds dramatic lighting, while sfumato, famously used by Leonardo, creates a smoky, realistic softness. Humanism. Instead of focusing solely on religious symbolism, Renaissance art celebrated the individual, the human body, and the intellect. Mythology, philosophy, and even portraits of common people became subjects of art. Classical influence. Artists and architects drew inspiration from Greek and Roman antiquity. Columns, domes, arches, balanced proportions, and ideal beauty were revived and reimagined. Scientific observation. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci blended art with science, studying everything from hydraulics to botany to improve their craft. Art became a tool for understanding the natural world. Architectural symmetry and proportion. Renaissance buildings like St. Peter's Basilica emphasized harmony and geometry. The concept of the golden ratio guided design to reflect divine perfection. Renaissance art was a celebration of life, a synthesis of faith and reason, science and spirituality, beauty and truth. The Renaissance produced some of the greatest minds in art history. Here are its legendary figures and their enduring masterpieces. Leonardo da Vinci, 1452 to 1519. The ultimate Renaissance man. Leonardo was a painter, engineer, anatomist, and inventor. His most famous works include The Last Supper, a masterclass in perspective and narrative composition. Mona Lisa, famed for her mysterious smile and the use of sfumato. His notebooks filled with sketches of flying machines, anatomy, and scientific inquiries show a mind centuries ahead of his time. Michelangelo Buonarroti, 1475 to 1564. Sculptor, painter, and architect whose passion and power transform the human form into divine beauty. Key works include David, a symbol of strength and human perfection. The Sistine Chapel ceiling, an epic visual story of Genesis, painted over 4 grueling years. The Last Judgment, a monumental fresco that reflects his deep spirituality and dramatic vision. Raphael, 1483 to 1520. Known for his graceful compositions and serene beauty, Raphael perfected balance and harmony. Notable works: The School of Athens, a fresco that honors philosophy, featuring Plato, Aristotle, and even a self-portrait. Numerous Madonna paintings that combined divine purity with human tenderness. Sandro Botticelli, 1445 to 1510. His mythological paintings like The Birth of Venus and Primavera captured the elegance and imagination of early Renaissance ideals. Donatello, 1386 to 1466. A pioneer of Renaissance sculpture, his bronze statue David was one of the first freestanding nude male figures since antiquity. These artists were not isolated talents. They were part of a larger ecosystem supported by patrons, scholars, and religious institutions that believed in the transformative power of art. The Renaissance didn't just change art, it reshaped civilization. Its influence continues to guide artists, architects, scientists, and thinkers to this day. Foundation of Western art, Renaissance techniques like perspective, realism, and anatomy became the standard for centuries. Artists from Rembrandt to Picasso learned by studying Renaissance masters. Birth of the modern individual, the focus on self-expression, human dignity, and personal genius, inspired later movements like the Enlightenment, Romanticism, and even modernism. The Renaissance celebrated the individual as capable of greatness, influence on education and science. The Renaissance encouraged curiosity and critical thinking. Figures like Galileo, Copernicus, and Newton built on its legacy to revolutionize science. As we marvel at its legacy, we see a mirror reflecting what we too can achieve when imagination meets mastery. In our next episode, we'll dive into abstract art, where shapes, color, and emotion collide to tell stories beyond words.